Hello there, I'm Angelo. Do you want to get into high-end content? Do you want to get those cool looking weapons? Do you want to be able to prove your worth with a number? If you stick around, I'll show you the fundamentals of endgame raiding and how to participate in extreme trials, savage raids, and ultimate content. If you want to get into high-end content, it's necessary to know the lingo. I'll explain the most commonly used words, at least what I've heard the most. Tier/floor. The set of 4 raids that comes out. 1 through 3 are normal fights, maybe have a phase change, but aren't notable. And the 4th is a longer fight, has harder mechanics, and has a notable phase change. I say it's notable because there's a full cutscene or animation where the boss is changing and the music and arena changes. Turn/boss/raid. These are the individual bosses in a fight in a tier. Prog. Prog is short for progress. It means to get farther in a fight and learn it. Blind prog means to prog something without any knowledge of the fight. Clear means to kill the boss. BIS stands for best in slot. It's the best type of armor for its slot. For example, the type of stat in the armor is what makes it BIS. For example, crit chance stat is the best stat that you can get. So you want to get armor with crit, but sometimes it'll have spell speed or skill speed, which may not be good. Pre-prog BIS/prog BIS. Pre-prog BIS is the BIS that you get before savage raiding. This is the best gear at the beginning of tier. Stat is short for statistic. There are attributes that measure your performance. PF is a shortened version of Party Finder. Here you can group with others and complete fights. Buff. The in-game name is enhancement, but it's something that helps you for a duration of time. For example, the buff Battle Voice increases direct hit rate by 10% for 20 seconds. Another example is Rampart, which reduces damage taken by 20% for 20 seconds. Party buff is a buff that buffs the entire party within the allotted range. For example, Radiant Finale increases damage dealt for you and your party members for 20 seconds. A debuff is a detrimental effect. Its in-game term is enfeeblements. A debuff is the opposite of a buff in the sense that it harms one of your stats or hurts you in some way. Example is a damage down, which reduces damage for a certain amount of time. Another example are vulns, which make you vulnerable and take more damage to certain attacks. Burst window /2 minute/1 minute/reopener. This goes by many names. A burst window is time when you'll do increased damage. Burst windows are around 20 seconds but can last longer. A 1 minute burst happens every 1 minute where some of your abilities become ready and you can use them. Can you guess how often a 2 minute burst happens? It happens every 2 minutes. This is a time when you get all your abilities except for ones with 90-second recasts. You push out as much damage as possible here, plus everyone's party buff will be out here, which means even more damage. A pot window is similar to a burst window. It happens at the same time, and it's when you can use a potion to increase the damage dealt. It lasts for 30 seconds. It has a 4 minute and 30-second recast timer, so if you pot an opener, it'll be ready for the 6 minute burst window. Luckily, the 6 minute burst window is also when all your cooldowns should be ready, like those 90 seconds that I mentioned earlier. If you do the math, 90, it'll come back up again 6 minutes in the fight. Parse. Parsing is when you use a third-party tool to calculate the damage of a fight. The parse is your percentile damage for your job. So if I kill Howling Blade and get a 2 parse, that means I was in the 2nd percentile, and 98% of the players who play the same job as me did more damage. Many people will try to parse, which means they fight to get a high parse. It's technically against the rules to use third-party parsers like ACT, but if you keep quiet about it, it does not really matter. You'll use FF logs to upload your fights. FF logs is such a great tool to improve your performance, not in just damage, but in everything, like healing and mitigation. That is the number I was talking about in the intro that proves your worth. The names for the raids. Each raid in the expansion has its own acronym. I'll give an example and break it down each part. We'll use the AAC Cruiserweight M1, which features Dancing Green as the boss. AAC stands for Arcadia Ascension Championship. Cruiserweight is the tier that we're on. M1 means Mode 1. Like I said earlier, each expansion will shorten the name. For this tier, Dancing Green would be M5N and an M5S for Savage. Also, M6S, M7S, M8S are the following fights, respectively. So the first tier was Light Heavyweight. This was M1 through M4S. This tier, Cruiserweight, is M5 through M8S. Next tier will be M9 through M12S. A Realm Reborn's Bahamut raids are T1 through T12. T is for turn. Heaven's Ward Alexander raids are A1 through A12, and so on and so forth for each expansion. Opener. Continuation of a burst window, but an opener is the burst at the beginning of a fight. Usually the main tank will start a cooldown, and on start, you use a ranged ability or gap closer, then you do your opener. Each job has their own opener listed on the balanced Discord. I showed it for Dragoon on the video I made. The opener is where you use all your abilities and get them on cooldown. Party buffing jobs will also use their party buff around the third GCD, which is around 7.5 seconds in. Once party buffs are rolled out, everyone bursts and does as much damage as they can. Like I said earlier, each job's opener is on the balanced Discord server and explains how to do it. Rotation. Rotation, also known as filler, is a part of the fight you do after your opener where you use your 1, 2, 3 and use your cooldowns correctly. You have to do your combo right and use abilities correctly to get high DPS. Your 1, 2, 3 is your main combo string. For example, Warrior, it'd be Heavy Swing, which is 1, Maim, which is 2, into Storm's Eye or Storm's Path, which is 3. So you'll repeat your 1, 2, 3 correctly to maximize damage. Some jobs, such as Dragoon, have longer 1, 2, 3 combos, but it's still called a 1, 2, 3. CD is short for cooldown. Most abilities have a cooldown, which means once you use it, you'll have to wait a certain period of time before you can use it again. Usually they're 60 or 120 seconds. Some are 30, 90, and 180 seconds. Invuln. The 4 tanks have a special ability that makes them invulnerable for a time. Each one has their own gimmick, but they're usually around a 4 to 5 minute cooldown. Enrage/DPS check. Each fight has a certain time that the boss must be killed by. If you don't, then they'll do an unavoidable attack that wipes the party. This is why you must perfect your rotation and opener so that you can chug out as much DPS as possible. Gear is also important because it increases your stats, such as strength and critical chance. Having higher stats means more damage. GCD. GCD is another way of saying weapon skill. GCD stands for Global Cooldown. This means all weapon skills share the same recast timer. So if you use True Thrust, you'll have to wait 2.5 seconds to use another GCD. The next GCD would be Lance Barrage. The general recast time for jobs is 2.5 seconds. Some GCDs will have long recasts, like 20 seconds or more, but they still have the same global cooldown as the other GCDs. So if you use Drill, which has like a 16-second cooldown, you can use it. You wait 16 seconds, but you're still on the general GCD cooldown. OGCD is another way of saying ability. It stands for Off Global Cooldown. Abilities don't share timers with others, but have long recasts. Post-production note, some OGCDs actually do have shared recasts, like Dark Knight's Carve and Spit and Abyssal Drain, which are different OGCDs, but they share the same 60-second recast. The difference between them is one is an AoE and one is a single target, so you can choose which one you use, but they still share the same recast, but don't with like other ones. OGCDs can be weaved between GCDs. Example, when you use Hard Slash, which is a GCD, then you weave Salted Earth and Reprisal, which are both OGCDs. Then you use Siphon Strike, which is a GCD. For almost every job, OGCDs can be double weaved, which means you fit 2 OGCDs, then your GCD will be ready, and it won't clip it. If you weave 3 OGCDs, then you'll clip your GCD. Clipping is where your GCD is ready to be used again, but you have to wait for an animation lock or server tick after using your OGCD, and this leads to damage loss. Weaving is using OGCDs between GCDs. LB is short for Limit Break. Limit Break is a special ability. Each role has their own version. Tanks reduce damage for a certain amount of time. Healers heal their party, and on the third LB charge, it will revive everyone. Melee DPS do a powerful single target attack. Ranged DPS do a light shape AoE attack. Casters will do a circle shaped AoE attack. In dungeon content, you can only get 2 LB charges, but in 8-man raids and trials, you can get a third one. Charge the bar by doing and taking damage. Each extra bar will increase the respective trait, e.g. damage, healing, mitigation, potency. Usually DPS will use the limit break, but some fights require tanks to use it. AoE stands for area of effect. This is a damage that affects multiple targets in a single area. They can be circle AoEs, line-shaped AoEs, or cone-shaped AoEs. Wipe is when the entire party dies. Stack/spread. A stack is when multiple people have to get close together to share damage, so it reduces it for everyone and it becomes survivable. Spread means you must spread your damage to not overlap. Bait is kind of self-explanatory, but it means an attack can be baited in a certain way. A gap close teleports you to the target, either your party member or the enemy. Some gap closers don't allow you to target the enemy, but instead allow you to move freely either in front of you, or ninjas, Tsukuchi allows them to teleport anywhere within a certain distance. Uptime is the amount of time you kept your GCD rolling. Usually you want a 98% or more uptime. Melee uptime, similar to uptime, is the amount of time that you're doing melee attacks instead of a ranged attack. This only applies to melees though. Greed. This is when you try to push out as much damage as possible. I can make a separate guide on how to properly greed, but I'll explain it here. There are two types of greed, melee greed and caster greed. Melees have the disadvantage of having to be in close range to the boss, but they usually do the most damage. Casters have the disadvantage of having to stay still to do damage. For melee uptime, let's say a cast will take 5 seconds to do the AoE attack, and it will take you 2 seconds to get from danger to safety. What you'll have to do is use a GCD, sprint, use your sprint, run out, wait 1 second for the cast to go off, and then you run back in all the time between your two GCDs. This results in higher damage instead of having to use a ranged attack. Ranged attacks do less damage. If you didn't greed, this would have meant that you would have had to gone out and use 3 ranged attacks. Melee uptime greed means you use as many melee attacks before you use your ranged attack, which increases damage dealt, thus increasing parse. For a caster, we'll use Black Mage. Let's say they have 10 seconds to move out of a puddle, but they have ley lines in the puddle, which increases their attack speed. What they'll do is use 4 casts, which leaves them 2 seconds to get out. But let's say it takes more than 2 seconds to get to safety. What they'll do is they'll use their gap closer to teleport to one of their party members who is already in safety. Not greeting once or twice doesn't really matter, but over the course of a 10-minute fight, this can lead to lower damage. Greeting the whole time will result in higher damage, but it is important to not die, because greeting is dangerous and it can lead to you dying. You always want to practice and test greeting. For ranged DPS, you probably won't need to greet as all of your attacks are ranged, and you don't need to cast. The examples I use are most definitely mathematically incorrect, but you get the idea. Those are some terms you should remember to raid. What is high-end content? This type of content goes by different names, such as high-end content, like I said earlier, endgame content, raiding, and hardcore content. Extreme trials, savage raids, and ultimate raids. These are the main types of endgame content. Extreme trials are the easiest types of endgame content. They are the best introduction to endgame content. The DPS checks are light, the mechanics are relatively easy, and little to no coordination is required. These fights last 7 to 10 minutes. Progging is easy. These are usually farmed for gear and mounts. These can easily be done without a static. Savage raids are probably the most common form of endgame content. These fights last from 8 to 11 minutes. They feature hard and tight DPS checks, hard mechanics, and require good team coordination. The loot from these can be obtained once a week. The reset is on Tuesday. Most statics are dedicated to progging and clearing these fights. They can be completed on Party Finder, but it's pretty difficult and frustrating. Savage raids drop bisque gear and weapons, as well as amounts on the 4th turn. Ultimate raids are the hardest. They contain about 5 phases. They can last from 14 to 21 minutes. They have tight DPS checks, harder mechanics, and very high amounts of coordination. I believe these should be done with a static. Party Finder would be very frustrating to prog. These drop very badass looking weapons that can be bisque for the current tier. Now there are other similar forms of high-end content such as Criterion Dungeons and Unreal Trials, but I won't really be going over those in this video. Now if you actually want to do these fights, prog, and clear, there are some prereqs you must meet for raiding. I will go over them and explain how to become a raider. Once you've completed the main story up to where you want to raid and unlock the raids, you may now move on to the next part and start raiding. Gear, pots, and food. You must get prog bisque gear or BIS gear, which I explained what it is earlier, so that you can hit DPS checks. You'll have to meld these with materia. Materia are things that can be fused into armor to give them a stat boost. Most gear has 2 meld slots for 2 materia. Some only have 1 meld slot. Crafted gear can be over melded, which means you can fuse more materia into it than can technically be melded. Over melding isn't really necessary, but it's recommended. Go to the balanced Discord server to see what your pre-BIS is. The gear is usually a mixture of crafted gear with extreme trial gear with normal raid gear. Food boosts a couple stats and your health for 30 minutes, 40 if you have the free company buff. Food is very important in early weeks when your gear is bad and you need to survive the hard hit, and food can give you that extra health that will definitely help. You'll want to get the current BIS food. Usually that's the one that boosts critical damage, but it can differ depending on your job. Check the balanced Discord server to see what your BIS food is. You always want it to be high quality. Similar to food, potions, aka pots, boost your main damage stat for 30 seconds. At first, you won't really need these during prog, but at the end when you're trying to clear and you need that extra damage boost, pots will definitely help. They have a 4-minute and 30-second recast. Usually you'll be able to get 3 uses in Savage Pool, but most of the time you only need 2. Also, same with food, these must be high quality. These are technically not needed, neither is food. If you don't die, you can hit the DPS check and your party's good, but it is still recommended. Learning your job and role is essential so that you can perform your rotation and opener correctly and meet the DPS requirement. The balanced Discord has guides for all the jobs in this game. Also, as of now, I have a guide for Dragoon, so you can go check that out if you want to watch it. I may make more guides in the future for different jobs and roles. Once you learn your opener and rotation, just attack a striking dummy for a while until you get good muscle memory of the opener rotation. Stone, Sea, Sky is a special fight that allows you to hit a striking dummy for 2 to 3 minutes. If you can't kill the dummy before the timer ends, then that means you need to refine your skills or get better gear. Clearing Extreme. Progging and clearing an extreme trial is very good for players if you have not raided in the past. The difficulty is pretty easy for entry-level players. You'll have to learn the mechanics, but they're pretty easy to prog. Later, I'll explain how to learn mechanics and prog, which also applies here. These fights also drop pre-BIS gear and a cool mount. Finding a static. If you want to do savage raids and ultimate raids, you'll want to find a static. A static is a group of members that dedicates time each week to progging and clearing. The 3 types of statics are casual, midcore, and hardcore. Casual statics raid 1 to 3 times a week for 1 to 3 hours each day. Midcore statics raid 2 to 4 days a week for 2 to 4 hours a day. Hardcore statics raid 5 to 7 days a week for 4 to 12 hours each day. Hardcore statics also may try to clear on week 1, which means they'll probably raid for 12 hours each day for the whole week. When looking for a static, you can go to different Discord servers that recruit. You can go on fflogs.com, which has a recruiting system. You can open Party Finder and set the filter to the latest turn in this tier, and you'll see people recruiting. When you find one, they'll usually look at your fflogs page and trial you to test your abilities. If you're new, your fflog page won't matter. If they like you, you'll be invited to raid with them. When you join a static, you have to make sure that the group fits your needs. Make sure that the vibe of the group is to your liking, and make sure the times they raid fit your schedule. If you absolutely don't want to join a group or find one, or can't, you can just use Party Finder to fight and prog. But I don't recommend only using it, as it's unreliable and can be very frustrating, but it is doable. Learning the mechanics and progging. Learning the mechanics to a fight is a need. High-end bosses are very difficult as their mechanics aren't easy to read. Either they don't telegraph, or you have to stack with someone or spread, and it's not easy to read it. Whatever it may be, each boss has its own unique fights. So before progging, you have to learn it. If you're going to be progging Savage, then I recommend Hector Lecture videos. He makes videos that explain the general strats going around for Savage fights. Renin, Yukazuri, Big Kobe, MTQ Capture, and Mr. Happy are some other YouTubers that I've seen that make good guides. There are also slideshow versions on Raid Plan, which the YouTubers usually take the strats from them and they'll put them in video form. If you open up Party Finder and search for your fight, you can usually DM someone and ask for the Raid Plan link, or ask someone in a Final Fantasy Discord server for the link. Fights usually have a couple different strats going around. I recommend asking someone in your static or in Party Finder what the Party Finder strats are, as those are going to be the most commonly used and probably the easiest. Whichever strat you're using, you'll now have to prog. With your static, meet up at the set time and day. You'll prog for a while and go off on your own. With PF, you open up Party Finder, set the filter settings to what fight you're on, and look for the parties that are the same prog point as you. This was my guide on how to get into raiding and give you the basic knowledge of raiding and the lingo. If you liked it, feel free to share with your friends who want to get into endgame content. I hope this helped, and I hope you keep having fun with Final Fantasy. Thank you for watching.